Well, welcome to the last but not least, of course, presentation for our 2017 Users Conference. We're going to be talking about the MapViewer, and I promise I will get you out on time today. Just a few things. As you can see, I am Tina Clark. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about the things that you will need to be able to use the PubWorks MapViewer. We're going to talk about its uses. We're going to talk about using the MapViewer and reports. We are also going to talk about controlling and adding data. First off, let's talk about what you will need. Licenses. So when you purchase the MapViewer from PubWorks, as you all know, a PubWorks license is a site license. So it does not require that you have a separate license for PubWorks itself for each workstation. But with the exception of the MapViewer, if you have someone who wants to be able to use the MapViewer within PubWorks, it does require an Esri license. Now, we have created our MapViewer on what is called an Esri Arc Engine platform. So what it is going to require from you is an Esri Arc Engine license. That can be a standalone license or a concurrent license, unless you are a PubWorks Cloud customer. If you are a PubWorks Cloud customer, you are going to need a concurrent license, and that license will of course live in the cloud with all of the rest of your stuff. These licenses can be purchased directly from Esri. The only caveat to that is that if you are a cloud customer and you have never purchased a concurrent license from Esri, you will need to purchase that concurrent license directly from us. ArcGIS desktop is not required. However, it is very useful to have at least one version of Esri desktop somewhere on site. And the reason for that is because unless your data is static, meaning that you don't have a lot of new assets being created, or if someone else is in charge of your data. The desktop license from Esri gives you that ability for the creation of new layer files that can be imported into the MapViewer itself. It also gives you a fantastic way to do spatial edits for things. I just highly recommend that you have somewhere a copy of desktop. Now, that doesn't have to mean that that person that has that copy of desktop is someone who uses PubWorks. If you have a GIS department that, of course, has, really doesn't care about PubWorks at this point, but they have that Esri license, then they have what you need there. And the only thing that the MapViewer users themselves would need would be an engine license. Is your data clean? Well, this is where we at PubWorks spend a lot of time first getting a client set up with regards to the MapViewer itself. I'm going to do a lot of reading here for these next couple of slides, and I know that you can download these slides. We also have a document that we call the GIS Golden Rules that can be sent. This is very important. And why is this very important? Just kind of like I had talked about in my presentation on Wednesday, the data that you are sharing between software packages has to be able to be used by both packages. And so, you may be able to use some data in Esri that you can't necessarily use in that format within PubWorks, and vice versa. You have data in PubWorks that can't be used in Esri. But So we've laid out the rules here for the data. If you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to ask us. But like I said, I'm going to do a good bit of reading here from these slides here for a moment, just so that I can, you know, pretty much make my point here and show the importance of your GIS data being clean. Because if your data is not clean, then it is going to give you, you know, lots of problems when you're trying to import or update or things of that nature. Because if you don't have the proper data formatted, you're going to run into some problems. So first off, your data, it must be in an Esri geodatabase format. Now I am including SDE in that and SQL GIS databases in that as well, because we do have the, you know, as long as you have the ability to create an Esri layer file from your data, we will be able to use that in the case that the data is live on your system, on your network, and not living in Esri's cloud or GIS online, if you will. You know, we get questions sometimes about the Esri online. The MapViewer is set to be reviewed for update next year, so I don't know what is going to come of that in the near future, but it is something that is slated for review here at PubWorks. But with that said, even if you are using Esri online and your data is stored locally and not in their cloud or their online, as I said, we still have that ability to get a hold of it. Shape files, we don't use shape files because they do not have a very good sorting and filtering ability. Shape files are the original way Esri used to store data. And hence the reason they have changed to geodatabases and SDE and things of that nature, which does a much better job at filtering and sorting. Okay, so each record within every feature class must have a unique ID, a code, and a name attribute column. Now, what does that mean? Well, first off, for those of you who are not GIS people, a feature class just means an asset type or a location type or a location feature type. All of those words are all synonymous. They're all the same. The unique ID, the code, and the name attribute could all be the same attribute column. However, what you need to do is you need to make sure that if you're going to make them be all of the same attribute, then you need to take the most stringent requirements, and that is the 16-character maximum. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you use the code and the name to be the same for each of the records. And the reason for that is that the name field is 64 characters for a reason. It is 64 characters so that you can be more descriptive about what your asset is. And let's just look really quick here at the PubWorks location records so that we can make sure everybody understands what I'm talking about here. So I am talking about the code field here and the name field, so that when we go to put that data in PubWorks from your GIS data, you'll have all of the information that you need to do that. All right, let's talk about the unique ID specifically, what it has to be. The unique ID needs to have a data type of text, so it needs to be an alphanumeric field. And that's because the information in PubWorks is a type of a text or alphanumeric. And it has a length of 32 characters or less. Again, unless you are using the same attribute for everything, You can use up to 32 characters for the unique ID. Now, what is this unique ID for? This unique ID is used to create a link between PubWorks and the GIS data. So in all of the data that is being stored in the GIS data, you have a piece of information that is identical to the piece of information for the data record within PubWorks. That's what's used to link the two together. If it changes or something of that nature, the link will be broken. The code attribute for locations is a maximum of 16 characters. Now that's, like I said, if you're using all the same attribute, that's the most stringent, so that's what we will have to go with. And also be the name attribute.
Hey, Tina?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, you just cut out there for a few moments.
Where did I cut out?
Maybe 30 seconds.
Okay. So do I need to repeat about attribute location maybe? So I'm just going to repeat here the last three things that I said. I said that the unique ID needs to have a data type field of text and have a length of 32 characters or less. This attribute column cannot be the object ID column. What is the purpose of that? The object ID column is a column that Esri creates for each spatial record or each asset, if you will. The problem with using the object ID column is that it may change. If you spatially or move in the world an asset, it may change what that object ID is, so it is not static. The code attribute for locations needs to be a maximum of 16 characters, and that is the most stringent of that, and 32 characters for the location features. Name attribute is 64 character text field, and that's for both locations and location features. All right, I'm going to keep going here. More information about is your data clean? When we are creating, we meaning PubWorks, are creating your assets for the first time through data conversion. We have at that point the option to use an attribute field that will be the parent location for a location feature. However, as you are adding new records to PubWorks after the data conversion fact, what will happen is the MapViewer is going to use what is called a spatial join. That is a utility that Esri has that basically takes the two asset types. So you've got the location feature file, and you've got the parent location file. So for an example of that would be signs would be the location feature, and roads would be the parent location that they are associated with. The MapViewer will use a spatial join to, when you're creating new records, new sign records from the GIS data, it will use that spatial join to assign the parent location. And what does that mean? That means that it's going to take the parent that is physically closest to that sign, and that is what it's going to use to create the parent location. Now, there can be some cases, especially at intersections, where the sign is really on one road, but the point is actually just a little bit closer to the center line of another road. We can't help those. That is a product of using a spatial join. It is going to create the parent of the asset that it is the closest to. That doesn't mean that you can't change it. All you have to do is go to that record within PubWorks after the fact and change the parent location. So if I've got an intersection of First Main and the sign is really on First Street, but it showed up on Main, all I have to do is open that record and change it to the parent location that you want it to be associated with. Now, if there is no parent location within 50 feet, so if you've got a sign standing out in the middle of a park or a field or something of that nature that does not have a parent within 50 feet of it, it is going to default that parent to a specific location that you have chosen for them to go to. And so that way, as you're entering or creating those new assets in PubWorks, it will allow you, again, if they're not where you want them to be, you can move them to the parent that you want them to belong to. Okay. All right. Another option for recording the feature class, like I said, is to have within that feature class the parent that it is assigned to. Now, we can use that during data conversion very easily to assign the parent location. If we're going to do that, the most important thing there is that the 16-character text attribute that is the parent in the sign records needs to be identical, of course, to the 16 characters of what is being used in the centerline file. Going forward after data conversion, that will take a few more steps to import into PubWorks, but there is some possibility for that. Okay, you are also able to link or sync other attributes to PubWorks. What that means is that you have other attributes besides the name and the code and the unique ID that you want to join between PubWorks and the GIS data. Excuse me just a minute. So that information also has its requirements. The attributes cannot be the object ID again, and that's because it's not a field that is of a type that we can use. The attributes must be either a text type, an integer, or a float. And they must match the attribute type in PubWorks. What I mean by that is we've seen several times in the last few days that we have those custom attributes, those 30 custom attributes, and you have 10 number, 10 text, and 10 list attributes. If you are attaching a number attribute through the GIS, it needs to either be an integer or it needs to be a float. And that, what I mean by that is the data type of the field. If it is a text or a link field, list field, it needs to be a text type. Attributes cannot contain null values. ArcEngine does not have the ability, and SQL in certain cases do not have the ability to deal with null values. Esri on some of their other platforms does have the ability to deal with the nulls. But what that means is that if you have attributes that you are going to sync back and forth between GIS and PubWorks, there needs to not be any null values. It can be blank, but it cannot have a null value in those. And if you have some data like that you need help understanding how to get those nulls turned into a blank, we can help you out with that as well. Okay, these attributes also need to be a maximum of 32 characters. If they are longer than 32 characters, they will cause you some problems in the syncing process. So 32 characters. And very important, these are special characters that cannot be used in the attribute. No underscores, which I know are very popular for GIS folks, but they are not popular with the programming language that PubWorks has been written in. Question marks, single quotes, and double quotes. Other than that, you can use any of the other special characters, but just not those. Those characters tell the program to do something that we're not expecting for it to do. All right, moving on. This configuration will ensure the accuracy, efficiency of the data conversion from the customer's GIS data to the PubWorks database. Plain and simple. The data needs to be clean so that it can properly be imported into PubWorks. And I mentioned this already, but I want to mention again because it's very important. Linking attributes must always remain in live GIS data. We've had some cases where we have gotten GIS data from a customer and they had created that unique ID for us because they didn't have a unique ID. We do the data conversion and everything, and they decide, well, that's not a field, so we're just going to get rid of it. Well, that doesn't work. That attribute that you are using to link has got to remain in both places, in PubWorks and in the GIS data. All right, Ellen, is there any questions before I start moving into about what we've talked about before I start into the going through the live data or the live software?
Yes. I've got a question from Ken. He asks, how do I shift a hydrant layer when the alignment seems to be off by half a city block for when it was imported into the MapViewer?
Okay. What that's telling me, Ken, is that there is some situation with your coordinate system associated with that feature class, Esri feature class or asset type, if you will. I will contact you after the users conference and we'll see what we need to do to fix that. We'll fix that through Esri itself, and it should be a fairly easy process.
Thank you, Tina. That Ken says thank you too. That concludes the questions. Okay.
Well, I'm going to keep going here. So these are the other things that I'm going to show today. I'm done off of my soapbox about cleaning data and things of that nature. So I'm going to now show the usages of the MapViewer itself. And the things that we're going to talk about are mapping data and data mapping. You have that ability in the MapViewer to go both directions as far as you can get to the data from the map or you can get to the map from the data. And we'll talk about all those. We're going to talk about viewing history, spotting trouble, and executing your plan. So with that said, I am going to come here to PubWorks. This is our live software, and this is the same data that you have been seeing for the last couple of days that we all use together. And if you have not ever seen the MapViewer, but you have seen Esri products, you will notice that it looks like a light version of Esri Desktop, because that's exactly what it is. It is a version of Esri that is used for your non-GIS people. I mean, of course, GIS people can use it as well, but it is got a user-friendly ability so that you don't have to be a GIS expert to be able to use it. All right, well, let's get started with the things that you can do with the map. First off, I want to show that you can get to the data for anything that you have on your map that is linked directly from the map. The first thing that you would do is tell it what are you wanting to select here. So I'm going to start with a street center line, and I'm going to grab my selection tool, and then I'm going to just select any asset here. Actually, I'm going to select this road, and you'll notice that when I select it, it highlights it. And when I right click, I get a new menu. And these are the things that you can do from the map. You can display location, task, detail. This first section here is showing the detail, your activity cost reports is what I'm trying to say. So you could show the activity cost report detail of that specific asset right from there. You can display the service request history. So if I have a specific asset that has service requests, I can display them right here. But what I want to talk about first is display PubWorks data. When I click on that, what it does is it is going to open up the record for that asset, the PubWorks record for that asset. And as we all know, once we get to this record, we can see everything and more that we wanted to know about the asset. We, of course, have, if this was since this is a location, I have location features, I have address, and I have depreciation schedule, work orders, service requests, and my activity log. So I have, and all of my attribute information. So I have everything that I need to know about this specific asset right here at my fingertips. All right, and I can do the same thing with a feature, of course. So if I wanted to, let's find a fire hydrant here. So I'm going to look at this fire hydrant. Selection tool, grab my fire hydrant, right click, display PubWorks data. Same thing. So locations and location features give you that ability to go from the map to the data itself. Let's look what else that we can do from the map itself. We can, let's just see what that display service request history looks like. So there it is, plain and simple, a list of the service requests that are associated with that asset. If I wanted to see something, I wanted to open the specific service request, all I have to do is double click on the row. It opens up the service request for me. Display attachments, documents, and notes. We saw yesterday the More button and being able to associate pictures and videos and Word documents and Excel spreadsheets and PDFs and all those things to an asset. If I wanted to see what those documents are that are associated with that asset, I can do that directly from the map as well. The move location or delete location or feature is, this is something that is slated for later versions of the MapViewer. And you can display all location features of the same type they're on the location. I really haven't come up with a good reason to do either of these two. But if by chance you were looking at a fire hydrant and then you wanted to see all of the fire hydrants that were on that specific road, that would allow you to do that. Next is create service request. And I know that Tyler did a fantastic job yesterday of talking about service requests, so I'm not going to go through any of that. But I do want to mention that besides the fact of being able to create a service request just by entering a service request in the service request log, creating a service request through the mobile device, or creating a service request through the online services service request, we have the ability to create a service request from the map as well. This is very handy in a situation where the person that is taking the phone call from the citizen or whomever that there is a problem, if they don't know specifically what that asset is, they can pick it from the map. So all I have to do is select it, right click, and say create service request. And what that's going to do is it's going to open my service request log and it's going to start a service request for me, but it's going to bring with me some very important information. It's bringing with it the location and the location feature information. I see this as probably a #1 reason that people use the MapViewer. It allows that ability to start those service requests directly from the map so that they are actually creating a service request based on the asset in question. Oh, and again, if you don't fill everything out, it won't let you out. All right, so that is going from the map itself to the data. Let's talk about going the other direction. So to do that, I'm going to close the map, and we're going to see the ways that I can get from the data itself, to the map. Now, those of you that are used to using an Esri product or an AutoCAD product, you know, any of your mapping type products, they take a smaller amount of time, or not a smaller amount, a longer amount of time to open than we have become accustomed to waiting on software to open. So that's one thing that we have to remember. So as I come here to my locations, let's just go to my streets. And here I am at Babbitt Lane. I am in this record, and I need to see, okay, where is Babbitt Lane on the map? Because I don't remember. I have a map button. And you're going to see that map button all through the software. And we're gonna go through each one of those right now. And as I said, it's not instantaneous as we are used to seeing. The amount of time that it's going to take is going to be based, number one, on your network speed. Number two, the amount of data that you have. And number three, is everything stored on the same server, or do you have it spread out through, you know, are there multiple servers that the system has to talk to drag data? And what we can see that it has done is it has opened up the map for us. It has zoomed to an area that encompasses whatever it is that we've told it to map, and it has highlighted that for us. So I wanted to know where Babbitt Lane was. Here it is. We have the same ability, of course, with the features themselves. I want to know where this fire hydrant is. I tell it to map it. Again, it's going to open up the map, and it is going to zoom us to the area where the asset is located and let us know which one it is. All right, so this one has opened it up here, and it has brought us to this fire hydrant here. If you want to change, when we're talking about a point, it's going to try and use the same symbology that you are used to. But if you want to change what it is, you have that ability so that you can highlight it to see it specifically. It is also labeled that for us so that we can recognize it. So that's our location and our location features. Let's see about mapping a service request. So if I am in a service request log and I want to see where is this service request, well, here we go. Here's my map button. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to open up the map, and it's going to zoom us to the area of where this service request is located. But the information that it is going to tell us is what type of service request are we talking about here. It also is going to highlight for us the location. If we are talking about a location feature, you can always turn that off if you don't want to see it. But you can see here that it has labeled it for us, hydrant number 2, and it is a fire hydrant problem. Another nice ability of having the map and being able to map service requests. Now, this is, of course, if you are not using the mobile device to receive service requests. If you are using the mobile device to see service requests, then you would obviously not need to be able to do this. But without that, you do have also the ability to print a service request with a map. And what that is going to do is it's going to print the service request, and it's going to give a small map that is going to give someone an indication of where the asset in question is, and enough information as far as, being zoomed out enough to let you know how to get there, type thing. So that is mapping and mapping a service request. The next thing I want to talk about is the service request status and mapping the service request status. So we've seen this screen several times in the last few days. What I want to show here is I'm just going to pick illegal dumping here. I've got 4 illegal dumping service requests, and I want to see where is each of these located. Where on the map are these 4 service requests located? And to do that, all I have to do is click on this map button down here and, of course, wait. And you can see here it has highlighted for us all 4 of the assets that are in question for these service requests. So I've got a service request issue here on Pilgrim Lane. I've got one in this stormwater pond, and this stormwater pond. And this is a nice functionality to be able to plan your day. If let's see who these were assigned to. I don't remember. Well, they're actually assigned to 2 different people, but if I was Tim Lake and I wanted to see where are my service requests that I need to take care of for the day, I could just put my name in here for the assignee, and then of course it's only going to show me my service requests, and I could map those and see where they all are to be able to plan my day. But of course, as we all saw yesterday and the day before on the mobile device, you will have that ability to map those service requests also on the device itself. If you needed to see the specifics about that specific service request, you just have to touch on the pin and let it show you. The one thing that I don't know if anybody mentioned, I don't remember hearing it, so I'm going to repeat it, is that the different color of these pins are going to indicate the different types of service requests, and there will also be at some point here a legend that's going to tell us what color means what. Okay, back to our map viewer on the desktop. So that's service requests, mapping with service requests and things of that nature. Well, we have the same ability in work orders. So if I am in a work order and I want to map it, so I've got one keyed up here that I want to map because it's not too cluttered. I want to see where are these streets that I am supposed to be sweeping today. Well, again, I've got a map button up here, and all I have to do is click it, and it is going to open and map these, in this situation, these locations for me, so that I know where are all of those that I need to sweep, when it's actually even telling me what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, I'm going to talk more about this later, but you may have the same thought that I have when I open up this map is, boy, it sure is cluttered at this point. Well, that's because if you could see over here, I have all of these different asset types or location or location feature types within my map. And if I have gotten to a point where I need to see this map, but I need to not see some of this other stuff that is in my way, it is as simple as unchecking these boxes over here. And when you uncheck these boxes, it will turn off the whatever it is that you have unchecked. So as I start turning a few things off, you can see my map is starting to clean out a little bit and make it a little bit more user-friendly for me. I'm going to turn these back on here. So that's mapping a work order itself. Next, let's talk about the activity filter. So we've seen this activity filter a few times, and what I would like to show here is its mapping function. So I want to see in the Northeast District all of the pothole repairs. And this lends itself to, you know, seeing the history and also making your plans, which is, you know, executing your plan that I had listed today. This gives you that ability to see what has been done so that you can determine what needs to be done now. So I want to see all of the places that, you know, all of the locations that we did pothole repair for in the year of 2015 for the Northeast District. Now I've got several options here. I can just tell it to map it, just show those to me. I can have it map it and tell me what the task was, because that would be used in a case where I was trying to map more than one task type. You know, in this case, we know what the task is because we're only choosing pothole repair. I can map it with cost, and that would be, so, you know, what are the costs that were associated with all of the activities associated with that. I can also map it with a pie chart, which is the one that I'm going to choose. What the map with the pie chart is going to do is it's going to open the map for us. It is going to highlight those, in this case, locations where a pothole repair was done. And it's going to give us a little pie chart on each one of us, showing a, you know, beach ball pie chart here, showing us the breakdown of the labor, equipment, material, and contractor costs. So for an example, this one here took mostly labor to get done, but this one took mostly equipment to get done. So, you know, this seems to be the general trend here is excuse me, that the labor cost is, you know, half of it about, and the material and equipment cost are a quarter each. I don't know what the situation would be here, why this material cost would be so much more. But again, this is a way for you to use your map to see the history so that you can execute the future. Ellen?
Hi, Tina.
Hi.
Couple questions. Can I jump in?
You bet.
Thank you. If PubWorks is already set up without MapViewer, can you link your GIS to it after the fact?
Absolutely, you can. The key to that would be that the GIS data that you have, if so, let's just say you have, let's just continue on our little fire hydrant track here. So if you have fire hydrants within PubWorks and you now have GIS data for those fire hydrants, the key there is that you have to have a piece of information that is in both places that is an identical. So for an example, if I were to look at my fire hydrants here in PubWorks, and let's say that I don't have these mapped, which of course you all know I do, but if I didn't, if I had either this code information or this name information, or even this external code information down here that is in PubWorks already attached to the GIS data that I'm wanting to link it to, then absolutely you can do that. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that as we get towards the end here. But that's the caveat. You have to have a piece of information in both places. There have been times where people have created new GIS data, but did not take into consideration that they wanted to link it to PubWorks, and there was absolutely nothing there to link it to. Two scenarios that can happen here. With the mobile device, now it's going to require you to go back to each asset. You could use that mobile device to update the information in PubWorks to match something that is already in the GIS data. Or as we saw, I'm losing track of days here, I think it was yesterday, as we were talking about exporting data from PubWorks as a CSV or a Excel spreadsheet. Esri has a way to put those tables in the GIS data Now, again, if there's no piece of information that is identical between the two, you've got some data cleanup work to do. But yes, the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions, Ellen?
Yes. One more question.
Okay.
Coordinates in decimal degrees. Is that an option to change to SP coords? Yes. Is that set by the Esri MXD or within PubWorks?
Okay, first off, there is no, as far as our MapViewer is concerned, there is no MXD. And I know I've got a GIS person talking to me here, so there is no MXD. The only thing that there is layer files attached to feature classes. The coordinate system is coming from the feature class itself. Now, with the mobile device, the latitude and longitude information is all that it has the ability for. Your tablets and your phones, that's what they have the ability for. If you have GIS data that is already, Esri data that is already collected and created, that has been done in a state plane coordinate system, or even we've even got one customer using a custom coordinate system that can also be used. And if you have any other questions about that, please give me a call, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in depth as far as GIS is concerned.
Thank you. Those are the only two questions as of right now.
Okay.
Feel free to ask any questions you have. Thank you.
That's right. Okay, I promise I'm going to get you out of here at 1, so I'm going to keep going unless that there are some more questions. The next thing that so we've already seen about creating a service request. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation here at this point. The next couple of things that I want to talk about are, first one, using the MapViewer's clipboard. So as you can see here, I can select assets on the map. I can select multiple assets on the map, and I can do that by windowing, or I can hold the shift button down and click, 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 click each one that I want. And then once I have them highlighted, I have this copy to clipboards. I'm not sure if you guys can see that very well, but right now, that's that menu that you get when you right click. It was the very last option after create service request. It is copy to PubWorks clipboard, not the Windows clipboard, but the PubWorks clipboard. And so what I can do with that information after I have selected it from the map is, the one thing that I can do is I can use that clipboard for report filtering. So if I am wanting to get information, I want to see what I'm looking at right here is an activity cost by location. I'm looking at the summary report, and I want to just see it for those roads or streets that I have selected in the map. I can come here to the filtering, click on my M for multiple, as we learned, and what I will have is this right here, clip. What that means is that when you click that button, it's going to populate over here those assets that you have brought from the map. So in this case, it is a location type of roads that we are wanting to look at here. And when I run this report, it is going to give me this activity cost by location summary only for those roads. Again, this is another way of using the map viewer to look at history and also move you forward. Another use for the clipboard is creating work orders. So if you have, I'm going to give an example of, I am the street supervisor, and I've been doing some, running the roads and noticing some things. If I want to come back to PubWorks and select those specific roads to have some preventative maintenance done on them, I can use that clipboard to start my work order. Now, the big key here is, of course, as Ed told us this morning, that asset has got to have an asset task plan for it. So if I wanted to use this add map to clipboard, it's going to add them, but I'm going to have to tell it what is the task that I'm going to perform. Okay, so I'm going to come back here. We're doing really good on time, so I'm going to come back here to the map, and I'm going to talk about a few other functionalities of the map itself. I'm going to talk about the actual tools that are used within the map itself for navigating and things of that nature. This was a section that I was going to leave out if I was running out of time, but you all don't have a ton of questions, so I'm going to talk about this as well. So again, here we are back in our map viewer, and we want to navigate from one place to another. Up here at the top, we have our navigation tools. And, you know, these are pretty standard of things that we're used to. The magnifying glass for zoom in, and we, of course, are going to window, and it'll zoom us in. Now, what else did you all notice when I zoomed in? What you probably noticed is that when I was in this view, I did not see my fire hydrants and signs and all of these things over here that are grayed out. I didn't see those. But as I start to zoom in, they start to turn on. We see how they have turned black. And I can now see those. And all that means is that we have created a layer file. The layer file that is being used to connect to PubWorks is got what is called a zoom level display. So I can tell the map that I only want to see my fire hydrants when I get zoomed in so far. I don't want to see them when I'm zoomed out, or vice versa. There may be something that you don't want to see as you get zoomed in further. For example, you can see here as I zoomed in really close, my district turned off. Well, that's just an example of how I can use that zoom function both directions. So we talked about the in, you also have an out. You have your little hand. That is your panning function. That allows you, of course, to move from one place on the map to another. This is to go back and forth through extents that you had already zoomed to. So you'll notice here, I'm gonna zoom to here, and I'm gonna hit this button, and it takes me back to my previous view. If I hit this one, I go the other direction. So that, you know, that can be used in a situation where, okay, I want to look at this, and then I'm going to come back, and I want to look at this, and I want to come back, and then I want to go back. So, you know, it's just a very simple tool of moving you back and forth through views that you have chosen. This is your full extent. What this is going to do is it's going to take you to the full extent of your map. It's going to allow you to see your entire county or your entire municipality. The fixed zoom, you got an in and an out. It is going to zoom you to in or out based on a specific amount. So it's just moving you at the same pace as you go in and out. This here is the refresh map viewer. It may be used in a situation where I am here and I turn something off or on and I want to refresh the map so that it will actually show those items. I can also, if I was waiting for something to draw, if I had, you know, like a huge aerial or something of that nature, and I stopped it drawing in the middle, I could hit that refresh and it would refresh to continue to display that. We already talked a little bit about the selection feature. This is your link back to your PubWorks data. The first thing that you do is you tell it what layer or asset type that you want to select. You grab your selection tool, and that then allows you to select these assets. Using that selectable layers gives you that ability to use your window, because otherwise you have to click specifically on the asset itself. But of course, if I had everything turned on to be selectable and I windowed, I'd end up with every single thing that was inside that window that I used. This is going to zoom you to the selected feature. So I was zoomed out here and I selected my Babbitt Lane, but now I want it to zoom me to Babbitt Lane. So now it has done that for me. And this, of course, clears any of the selections. The identify button. Now, this is a useful tool when you get to the point where you have an asset that has more than 30 attributes that you want to keep tabs on. Because you know that PubWorks has 30 customizable attributes. I have seen a very, very, very few times where that wasn't enough. And so it gives you that ability to store that attribute data, not in the PubWorks data record itself, but you can look at it because it's attached to the GIS data itself. So if I hit the identify button, I get a new little window here. And this little window is asking me, what do I want to identify? I can choose the most top layer. I can choose all visible layers, any of these things, or I can pick something specific. So I'm going to tell it that I want to identify some signs. And again, now that I've done that, I can use my little window. And I want it to identify this sign for me right here. And when I use that, I'm going to get a list of attribute information. And this attribute information is every attribute that is being stored in the GIS data, not the PubWorks data record, though it may also, the attribute may also be stored there as well. But if by chance in my PubWorks data records for signs, I did not have the district ID for whatever reason, I'm making this up, I could look at the attributes for the GIS data and it is going to tell me that information. Just another good way to keep more information than you probably ever wanted to know. This XY here, if by chance you know the XY of a specific asset, you could click that and type it in here and it would take you there. Locate address on a map. Now, this is not something that is going to work right out of the box with your MapViewer because it takes what is called an Esri locator. And what that means is that your GIS folks will need to create that address locator for you, and that will be used as a US dual range address type. And what does that mean? That means this. The address information that is needed to be able to use this address locator is the dual range. A dual range means I've got a range of addresses on the left side of the road that are odd numbers, 1 through 50, or 49 actually. And on the right side of the road are even numbers, 2 through 50. And it needs that information to be able to create this locator so that when you click on that, you can type in an address and it is going to take you to that address. It's good. It's not a lot of folks use it, and here's the reason why. Because in PubWorks, we have location addresses. And these location addresses have a lot more use for us, and they have a lot more information than just a point on the map. And as you can see here, I've pulled up the address, the location address for 10 Babbitt Lane. And I have a map button. If I map that, it's going to take me to where 10 Babbitt Lane is. But what else is it besides just clicking on that and it taking me to an address? I get all of this other information. I get, whatever information you have stored here. And of course, we all know that the yellow fields are required and the whites are always optional. But I get what features are attached to this address. An example of that would be a water meter. I get what service requests have ever been associated with this address. So if someone has called in to say that there is something going on at a specific address, it would be listed there. And then, of course, the activity log. The activity log is the work, of course, that was performed to satisfy the service request. So that's my, again, soapbox about instead of using this locate address on map, using the PubWorks addresses themselves, because they have a lot more data for you. And, I have those addresses in PubWorks under the location addresses, but I can also have points on the map. So here, you can see here on Babbitt Lane, here's that 10 Babbitt Lane that we were talking about. I just had those turned off so that I didn't have to see them, because if I had them turned on and I had the map zoomed all the way out, I've only, on my demo data, I've only got enough addresses for these 2 roads. But imagine if I had a point for every address that was in Willingsboro, New Jersey, this would be one big dot. So I had them turned off so that I didn't have to see them. But if I needed them, all I have to do is click that little checkbox and they're going to turn on for me. Measuring tool, plain and simple, measuring tool. Click on this, it brings up the measuring tool. If I want to know, let's turn these little addresses off and let's zoom in a little bit here. If I wanted to know the exact position, how far something was from something else, I can use this measuring tool. Let's say I want to know how far is this stop sign from this storm water connector, 69.95 feet. And I want to know how far is this storm water connector to this stop sign. It's 203.84 feet. We use these a lot of times in past for things called swing ties. The invention, of course, of the mapping on mobile devices and things of that nature have kind of taken those by the wayside, but there are still good reasons to be able to use that. Swing ties, that is. Another use for measuring, of course, is just to measure how long something is or how far something is from something else. Let's see, what else? Labels and symbology and layer visibility. We already talked about let's clean this up here. We already talked about layer visibility, such as if I don't want to see these signs, all I have to do is uncheck that box and they're going to turn off. And of course, when I check it again, they're going to turn on. Now, if you are in a situation where you have those zoom levels that we've been talking about, and you have these gray, these are inactive, I can even turn them off before I even get zoomed to them. So if I never want the trees to turn on, no matter what I'm zoomed into, all I have to do is uncheck that and check it again to turn it back on.
Speaking
Symbology.
of zooming, hold on real
Yes.
quick. I have a question about zooming.
Okay.
How do you set the scale dependency or zoom level?
I'm unsure exactly what you are speaking of specifically, but my guess is that you are wanting to tell it to zoom to a specific level, or meaning this level up here, when you are telling it to zoom to a road or a sign or something of that nature. The ARC engine does not have the ability to create custom zoom levels for that. What it is going to do is it's going to zoom you to a level that is pertinent to whatever it is that you are mapping. If you are mapping a road, it's going to zoom you to, or street, you are going to zoom to a point on the map where you can see the entire street. So if you have, for an example, this Levitt lane right here, which goes all of this way, and you tell it to zoom to it, it's going to zoom you to a level that is going to encompass all of Levitt lane. However, if you were zooming to Babbitt lane, which is only from here to here, it is going to zoom you to a level that encompasses all of Babbitt lane. And the same with the features. It's going to zoom you to a point that is pertinent to what you are zooming into. And I hope that answered your question.
She has an addition. How do you determine whether it is grayed out or not?
And I think, again, that we're talking about over here, those zoom levels that are grayed out. Those zoom levels are created within the Esri layer file itself. So as the map is being, when you implement the map and you are telling it that you want new layers to be put into the map, you're going to create what is called an Esri layer file. That Esri layer file has the information about what zoom levels that you want to see things at, as well as what is the symbology that you are going to use to display it on the map. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Next question. This one's a little longer. What is a typical workflow for syncing GIS resources with PubWorks assets? For example,
we're going to talk about that next.
Okay.
So let's go through that. Let me finish right here, and then we're going to talk exactly about that next.
All right, great. Thank you.
You bet. Symbology. Let me just quickly mention the symbology here on these layer files. I have my everything here. I have it collapsed because I wanted you to be able to see all of the different types of assets that you have here. But this symbology is what is associated with the specific asset. And again, that comes from the layer file itself. Okay, so that is your tools that you use within the software, or within the MapViewer itself. Let's go to the question that we just had here. So to do that, I'm going to come back here to the presentation. And the question was, what is the workflow for adding and synchronizing attributes? So what the MapViewer has is something called a data manager. And that data manager looks like this right here. This data manager is only visible to people who are administrators of the map itself. So if I am not an administrator of the map, I would not have this functionality. But what this data manager does here is it gives you all of the information that it needs, or gives PubWorks all of the information that it needs to be able to link to the GIS data. On this left-hand side here, this is the GIS information. What I see here is the layer file name, so that's the Esri layer file name. I see it's a feature class name, which most of the time are the same, but they of course don't have to be. This is basically what the feature class is called, and this is what the layer file is called. Storage type. The storage types are your file geodatabase, your personal geodatabase, or your SDE. Storage path. This is, of course, where on your network is the feature class located. Where is the Esri file that has the data in it? Where is it located? This is the layer file that is associated with the feature class, and this is where the layer file comes from. These layer files that are created are placed in a specific place in the PubWorks file structure so that the program knows where to get it. And that is wherever on your network PubWorks resides, there is a data folder, of course, and in that data folder, there is another file called layer files, and that is where they are all located. Data link field. We're currently only using one data link field, and this one is called PW code, and it is a text type because that's what we've told you that it needs to be. It doesn't need to be called PW code. I'm just calling it PW code for simplicity here. But that is what is the attribute field called in the GIS data that we are using to link to PubWorks. Okay? Over here is the PubWorks information. What location feature type or location type am I linking to? Well, in this example right here, I am linking to fire hydrants. And so I am telling it that it is a location feature type within PubWorks called fire hydrants. PubWorks link. This is the field in the PubWorks data record that equals this field. These are my two very important pieces of data that need to be able to talk to each other. This is what attribute am I using to create the code in PubWorks, and this is what attribute am I using to create the name. Well, you've noticed here I'm using PW code as the code field in PubWorks, but I'm also using it as my linking field. Totally fine. Totally fine. I tell it that I want it to create new PubWorks records when I'm synchronizing. I haven't come up with a good reason not to use it, but this checkbox needs to be here if you want to have it create new PubWorks records when it is doing synchronization. Down here, parent location type and parent ID. This is what is the location type from PubWorks that is the parent location of the location feature. So in our case here, the streets are the parent location to a fire hydrant. And if you'll remember, we talked a little bit as we were talking about the needed data and the spatial join. This is the ID of the parent that we are going to put any record that is being created that is more than 50 feet away from a specific parent. So if I was using this synchronization tool, I would find any fire hydrant that was located within further than 50 feet away. I would find it under this parent location. And that way I can go to that parent location, find those fire hydrants, and move them to where I want them to be. And then this is the button here to do that synchronization. So quickly, what that means is that someone in PubWorks or someone has created some GIS data. We have got all the attribute information that we need. We're going to populate this box with all of its information. We're going to click this button. And what it is going to do is it's going to look at all of the PubWorks records for fire hydrants, and it's going to look at all of the fire hydrant records in the GIS data. It's going to look for the ones that are only in the GIS data, and it is going to create the PubWorks record for those assets based on the information that I have given it here. This link to PubWorks here, this would be a situation where I already had PubWorks records and I have GIS records. I've already got both of them, and I just need to link them together so that I can map them. That's what this utility here will do. So that would be the creation of new assets. Over here, which you can see what I'm looking at here on this side, the map attributes is nothing more than this tab that you see right here. So in the data manager, I would click on this tab and the view would look like this. I'm going to actually make this a little bigger. This is the linkage between the PubWorks attributes and the GIS attributes. What you are going to do is you're going to come in here, and for each attribute that you want to link, and this is of course just the initial setup that needs to happen, one time or each time you make an addition to new attribute, creating a new attribute that you're storing or something of that nature. You're going to tell it what attribute in PubWorks equals what attribute in the GIS data. So for an example here, in the attribute type of condition is what's in PubWorks, and in GIS it's called hydrant con. So I've told the system that this equals this. This GIS data equals this PubWorks data, and so forth. Now, if I have a workflow scenario where I can do this one of two ways here. The GIS department has gone out and they have done a bunch of attribute syncing or collecting, and I want to push that data to PubWorks. What I would do is I would run this synchronize attributes, and it's going to tell me what is the piece of information that I have in PubWorks and what is the piece of information that I have in the GIS data. So we can see here on fire hydrant number 2 that its condition in PubWorks is fair, but the GIS value is good. Now, what we have to do is we have to decide which direction are we going here, because we can go either direction, and we can go either, one over here and one over here at the time if we so choose. But typically, we wouldn't see that scenario. If it has been a case where the GIS people have gone out and they have updated this information, then I am of course going to copy GIS attributes to PubWorks. So if I were to click this button, it would move this fire hydrant from being fair to being good. Now, if everything was the other way around and it was a PubWorks user who had updated all of this information, which I think we're going to see a lot more of with the creation of mobile, because they'll of course be able to go out in the field with mobile and update that attribute information. If the GIS people want you to, you would have that ability to take that data from PubWorks and push it to the GIS data. Now, before I have some GIS folks hollering, that is going to only happen if, 1, the person has the administrative rights to the map, 2, this utility is run, and 3, the feature class that you have gives that person the ability to write to the feature class. So we don't obviously just let people willy-nilly update GIS data because we know better. So I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, please give me a call and I can actually go through some of the process with you with the live data. I don't want to keep you guys much any later. So back to my presentation here. Ellen, are there any final questions?
Sure, just one. Do you need an engine license installed if you already have an ARC desktop installed?
Good question. The answer is no. You have to have a minimum of an ARC engine license, but if you have a desktop license, you do not need also an engine license. Good question.
Tina, thanks for sticking to the schedule. You're right on time.
You're very
And
welcome.
if you do have additional questions and we have not addressed them, please reach out to support. They will love to help you. So support@pubworks.com or 888-920-0380 extension 2. We have a support website. It's support.pubworks.com, and that's filled with tips and tricks, tool tips, webinars, how-to videos, documents, anything that you need regarding support. You could usually find it right at that the support site.
Thank you. And I wanted to just personally thank everyone for attending the users conference. And please do not hesitate to call our support if you have questions.